All right, I would like to call to order this meeting of the Town of Hilton Head Island Parks and Recreation Commission for a workshop on park planning. And at this time, if you would please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I am going to assume with all these names I see that we are in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act.
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay, and so the next item would be a roll call of the commissioners.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kasaya,
Here.
Mr. Daly,
Here.
Mr. Dowling,
Here.
Ms. Christian,
Here.
Mr. Okarma,
Here.
and Mr. Zarilla.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. And thanks for everyone joining us today. I know that we have a new setup here with some technical things, but I think all in all, we're doing pretty well. So at this time, we're going to go forward with the overview and discussion of the Chaplain Community Park and Crossings Park projects. And I'm going to call, I think, on Taylor Ladd for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and good morning, commissioners and council members tuning in, as well as our Parks and Rec Commission joining us on our live stream. I am Taylor Ladd, project planner for the town's capital projects division and lead for the Chaplain Community Park and Crossings Park redevelopment project. These are two projects that have served our community very well for many years. But now it is our time to invest in refreshing them and expanding their offerings to meet the needs of today and tomorrow's best-in-class park system for the island. I'm excited to join you all today at this kickoff workshop for a project that has been several years in the making, several community hours in the making. So thank you, commissioners, for the dedication and support you've given this project, and to our Parks and Rec community for helping make this happen, and for council for making this a priority. I also want to thank everyone who came out to our Chaplain Open Park Day at Chaplain Community Park yesterday evening. If you didn't make it, that's okay. There will be lots of other opportunities to participate as we progress with this project. So this week is just the kickoff. It's just the beginning. So today for this workshop, we have joining us from their office, our consulting design team led by Wood & Partners. With Design Workshop. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And thanks to all for meeting with us this morning. This is a very important series of projects for us. We're very excited to be working on the master planning for Crossings Park and Chaplain Park. And appreciate your time and input as we move forward. I'm going to start with a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We'll begin by introducing our project team. We'll then talk about community input that has occurred previously, discuss milestones in our preliminary schedule as it's set right now. Then we'll do a deep dive into each of the two parks. And Chairman, what I'd like to do is we will review information on Crossings Park, and then we'll open it up for discussion and input on Crossings. We'll then retake the floor and discuss Chaplain Park and some of its attributes, and then we'll ask for input again separately for Chaplain Park. So we're going to split it into two distinct discussion periods. Then we'll wrap up with any questions or comments at the end. And I believe I have been forwarded a public comment. And so I guess we'll read that comment at the end of everyone else's input.
Can everybody see the screen? Is that coming through?
Yes.
Okay.
To get started, I'm Kyle Theodore with Wood and Partners, and we are the prime consultant on this project, having assembled a team that has worked together before in the design and implementation of Low Country Celebration Park. We have one addition to that, but also let me back up for a second. With me today is Trey Griffin, who is our senior project manager. I will be the primary point of contact for the project. And joining our team is Design Workshop, led by Kirk Culbertson, chairman and CEO, and Glenn Waters, principal with Design Workshop. And they are joining us today. Other members of our team, but not participating today, are Thomas & Hutton Engineering, who will be performing civil engineering and stormwater management for us. Watson Tate Savory, our architects, that's Jean Bell, and Newkirk Environmental Consultants, who will be assisting us with environmental consulting. I know y'all are very familiar with this. What we wanted to do was just briefly review community input that has led to where we are today. It's built a really great foundation, starting with the Los Design Park and Rec master plan that was adopted in October 2020. And as you know, it addresses current gaps in recreation as well as planning for long-range needs over the next 10 years. And that exercise included a good deal of community input that sort of set the foundation. That information was then rolled over into the our plan, the Parks and Rec section of our plan, which included additional community input and resulted in a series of action items. And that takes us to part 3, which is what we're here for today. Previously, staff facilitated some additional public input through open house, live polling, an online questionnaire that was housed on the town's website. And all of that information was congealed to create a proposed program for each of the 2 park sites. And what we're hoping today to do with you is to get some validation of those program items. And as I mentioned, we will talk about each one of them separately, beginning with Crossings Park. As we move forward, we have a series of project milestones and a tentative schedule set as follows. And it begins with the kickoff meetings that we had yesterday and that we're continuing to have today. We'll be conducting a site visit later this afternoon. We're hoping that the rain will hold off and the weather will cooperate, but we're going to visit both of the park sites, and then we will finalize our site analysis and begin taking the program elements that we have for each of the 2 parks and actually applying them to the parks to see if they will fit. Will all the puzzle pieces fit to create a complete puzzle? We'll then also, after those capacity studies have been tested, be conducting a collaboration meeting with the Mid-Island team, who is doing a planning exercise separate from us, but we want to coordinate with them and ensure that all of the critical elements, program elements, are addressed at those 3 park sites, and that there's something that's not slipping through the cracks in terms of facility needs. And we will then prepare preliminary concept plans that we bring back to you and other groups for input. So as Taylor mentioned, we're just getting started, and we're going to continue to solicit your input as we move through the planning process. Once we've gotten your input for those initial concept plans, we'll finalize plans and then come back to present to you, council, and the public for final endorsement. And that we anticipate happening shortly after the 1st of next year. We'll start, as I mentioned, with Crossings Park, which has about 56 acres in total. But of that 56 acres, there are approximately 34 acres that are existing wetlands. I will mention to you, those wetlands have a restrictive covenant placed on them that was agreed to at the time of the Cross Island Parkway construction. It was a mitigation agreement. And so we are working with staff and the town attorney to find out what can, if anything, happen within those wetlands. I know that last evening we spoke with a number of folks who had interest in maybe some bike trails in those wetlands, and we'll have to do some investigation to find out if that's possible. There's also approximately 219 parking spaces that are currently on site at Crossings Park. As we begin to study our park site, there are a number of considerations that we have to take into play, and they range from things like understanding where the specimen and significant trees are so that we can avoid them, looking at possible impacts of the restrictive covenants on wetlands that I mentioned, taking into consideration stormwater management, making sure that our plans mesh with existing open space and trails so that we have connectivity to both of those elements, making sure we take into consideration sun angles for any new playing fields. And then in addition to the recreation needs, making sure that our plans have taken into consideration public spaces for gathering, interpretation, and celebration of the island. I know most of you are familiar with this, so I'm going to quickly run through. These are the existing program items that are currently housed at Crossings Park. There are 3 ball fields with a central restroom and concession building, a batting cage pavilion, full-size soccer field, and then an open playfield meadow that supplements all of those active recreation elements. There's a playground.
Yeah, this is Culbertson.
Oops. Oh, I'm sorry. Skate park and roller hockey with cross court basketball, and then a series of trails. Okay, to you, Kurt.
Yeah. Good morning. As Kyle was mentioning, the program was vetted as part of the original Lowson Associates Park System Master Plan, as well as input from the Our Plan effort. The resulting proposed program, therefore, is to consolidate all ball fields at the site, and by that principally baseball fields we're talking about, redevelop the existing fields, restrooms, concession buildings, and plaza, add 2 new 300-foot radius baseball fields, expand parking to support the program, develop new amenities such as dog park, splash pad, ADA accessible playgrounds. We heard a couple of times yesterday in our meetings the idea of a destination playgrounds, new pathways to serve all of this, and then add irrigation as appropriate. So what we would really appreciate is your thoughts on this proposed program based on prior input. Do you have any additions, subtractions from it, any nuanced comments, details that we ought to be able to be aware of and consider in this effort?
This is Jerry O'Karma. I have a question. What would be the surface for these ball fields? Are we talking about grass or something synthetic? What is in mind? And what did you hear from the people?
What would you like to see?
Well, we've talked for a number, not just baseball, but also soccer. We've talked kind of almost meeting after meeting with the problem of maintaining the grass in the, the harsh, and not only the harsh environment, but also the heavy use that, that each of these fields, whether it's ball fields or soccer, whatever it might be. And I'm just wondering, as we're planning this for the future, are we looking at one or more of those baseball diamonds to be something synthetic that's probably got a higher upfront cost, but it provides much more availability and is easier to maintain.
And I think that's something we'll breach as we move forward. Our main focus thus far has been understanding the program elements and making sure that there's adequate space to accommodate each of those. And then as we move forward with the implementation phase, you're right, we need to have discussions about artificial turf versus natural grass. That's a big discussion point.
Okay, thank you.
Are you looking for comments now, or are you going to continue the presentation?
No, this is the point that we would like to solicit input on the program elements that Kurt just outlined and that are on the screen, hopefully,
For crossings.
for crossing.
Okay. Well, if Renee, if you're on the line there, if you wouldn't mind, how about calling the roll of the commissioners and giving each of them a chance to make comment or say they don't have any comments, and I'll go last.
Sure, it's Karen. Mr. Daly?
Yes, a few comments. One thing that we need to capture here is in the past couple of years, there's a lot of conversations about USCB playing college baseball on Hilton Head at crossings. So we can talk to their AD and still see if that's something they're considering, if that's something we want to consider. And that would obviously change the designs of at least one of the ball fields to something more college sized that could host college games, even something along the size of Savannah Bananas type summer league games. That's something we have to hash out. And just from having coached rec baseball, if we could get the number of fields there, because we cannot count on Barker for any relief from baseball, demands. We should probably, if possible, be looking at adding 3 fields for a total of 6, if room, allows. And that's why we have, Wooden Partners, the geniuses of design, to figure out how we can fit all that into one space and still make it nice, But that's kind of the number a lot of the baseball people are talking about, to be able to expand what we do from just youth baseball to include youth softball, adult softball. There's many ball sports that there are demands for and there's interest in. And as we stand now with just 3 fields, we don't have the capacity to handle all those requests. So if you're looking at a 6-field complex, I think we'd be able to capture all that and then some. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dowling?
What would happen to those basketball courts that are there already?
The basketball courts that are overlapping the roller hockey.
Yeah.
Right now, we would propose that they be retained.
Okay. And would they be resurfaced or fixed? Because whenever it rains, there's a huge puddles that form there.
Okay.
Is that part of it?
It can be, yes. Getting input like you're providing us with is really helpful. So drainage is an issue with those with the roller hockey arena.
I think it's the pitch as well. Just puddles seem to form at certain spots. So maybe the pitch is not right, whatever it is. But that would be helpful to redo that as well.
Ms. Christian?
You had mentioned the roller hockey rink and the skate park, and those are items that I'm guessing you guys are going to kind of give a makeover to and continue to keep those. I didn't see them listed in the list, so I just wasn't sure.
Yes, the thought would be to retain those. They may, we may be discussing based on what we're hearing from folks. We will breach the subject with the town about whether they are renovated as part of the park improvements.
Okay. Would they still possibly keep a multi-use field in addition to the new ball fields?
Is that something you'd like to see?
I think it's important if there's the space. I mean, I think you kind of need to have a multi-use field just just for extra, kids playing around while their brother and sister are, playing the ball games at the baseball diamond or the softball diamond. That's it.
Thank
Mr.
you.
O'Karma.
Just two or three quick things. One question is, the reference to the dog park, would that be in lieu of the one that's already at Chaplain, or would that supplement that? What is your thinking?
I don't know that we're going to eliminate one at Chaplain, and we'll talk about that when we get to Chaplain. But this is being proposed as a Crossings Park, dog park.
Okay. All right. That's good. I use that a lot. That's great. I think the concept of consolidation is good, and it's obvious. So I'm glad to see that that's part of what your thinking is. When you use the word redevelop existing, what does redevelop mean? Does that mean like freshen up the restrooms and things like that, or what?
It means in the case of Crossings Park,
Yes.
hanging on to 3 ball fields, more than likely where they currently are, but updating. We haven't assessed the buildings yet, but looking at the buildings and possible renovation of the buildings. So it's retaining what program elements are there now, like the 3 ball fields, and then supplementing with 2 additional ball fields.
Okay. All right. And then the last thing, not to beat a dead horse, but I really do think I don't have a preference one way or the other, but I just think this is a decision that we're making that we're going to live with for a number of years, and we just got to get those surfaces right. If they're all grass, that's fine with me. If they're all synthetic, that's okay with me. If some are some are the other, that's okay with me. But I just think we need to get that right. That's all I've got.
Thank you.
Mr. Zarella?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Something happened.
It appears that we just lost Mr. Zarilla off the call.
Okay. Butch, if it's okay, we'll continue on. And then as he reconnects, we'd still like to get his input on Crossings Park.
Okay, I've got a couple of comments, if that's okay.
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, the first kind of agree with what most everybody has said. I think a couple of things. We need to, as you're looking at these ball fields, you need to go to the, I guess to the organizations that are the governing organizations for the leagues that are being played, and find out what their recommended dimensions are for ball fields. A 300-foot field is basically the minimum now for adult softball. It is not big enough for baseball over the age of 12, 13 to 15 and 16 to 18s. If we were to have those age groups playing, we'd have to have a bigger ball field than that. The second is during the meetings, as Jack was saying, for the task team for our plan, in the recreation section of that, we did meet, actually had as representation on the committee, the AD from USC Buford, and he was very interested in finding a place to play. I think that's a real opportunity for the island if we could work with them to build a facility that would meet their needs. It would meet the baseball needs for us for older age groups to play. We could have summer ball here, it would be a real attraction, I think, for the island to have that ability to have those types of facilities. The other thing that I'll say is if we build really, really good facilities, we can get more into the sports tourism aspect of it, but also then we have really good facilities for the people that live here. And I think we want to do that. So the other thing I would say is don't sell yourself short with crossings. And when we get into Chaplain, I would prefer personally that you look at those pieces of property as a blank slate. And instead of thinking, well, we got ball fields here, we'll leave them here. Let's find out what fits best where and redevelop the park to meet the needs based on a new plan for the park. And if it works out that the ball fields can stay where they are, that's fine. But I wouldn't start out thinking that we're going to keep the fields where they are. Let's look at this as an opportunity to kind of meet some of these deficiencies that we've got, using crossings primarily as the baseball, softball side of it. And my last thought would be, at some point we need to talk with the county about Barker. And if we could move all of the soccer and lacrosse and the field sports like that over there with synthetic turf, that would probably solve a lot of our issues. So, but anyway, that's all the comments I have.
Thank you very much. Do we have Mr.
Zarella
Zarella
has
back?
regained the call. Yes, he's back on.
Yes, I'm back.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. This is 2 visits in a row online that I'm having trouble here. So yeah, it's just dropping off. What did you get of my comments?
We did not, I did not hear any of your comments. So I apologize for that, but we definitely want to hear from you.
Okay, I guess two quick things. I'm a big fan of the turf. We need to try the turf out and see if it's more practical than grass. And I want to also kind of second Butch's thought about Barker Fields. I think putting some things out there. Are you gone?
No, we're still here.
Oh, okay, yeah. Putting some fields out there with turf would be a great idea. And also the concept of put the facilities where they're most needed. And I know from my side, I'm in the north side of the island, and me getting to Crossings Park is, it's a bit of a trip. And I think having them spread around the island a little bit so everybody has better access would be good. And the third thing was the parking. I'd be concerned about parking down there. Where, you said you're going to expand parking. What are you going to do for that? Will we have a huge parking lot down there somewhere?
Well, as the new facilities are brought online, there will be new needs. So that would all be part of the study. Is it building on what's there now? Is it constructing new and getting rid of what's there now and consolidating? Is it spread out? It'll all be part of our study.
Yeah, because I think some of the fields are more accessible walking than others, and to certain people. So I think that's going to be a critical ingredient, because if we have too little parking, it's a problem, and too much is a problem too. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, we're going to move on to discussion of Chaplain Park.
So we just wanted to make you aware that we do know that there's an important study that's already out there as far as the Chaplain Linear Park. So as we start looking at Chaplain, we will take into consideration the work that's been done and make sure that we provide the links that are appropriate both to 278 crossings and to beach, to make sure we're addressing all of those needs and not just turning our back on the work that the town's already done. When you start looking at the Chaplain site itself, it's a very similar sized park, not including the beach portions to Crossings. It's about 60 acres or just a little bit under, but unlike Crossings, it has much more upland to work with. There's only about 2.25 or so acres of ponds that are existing. So we've got almost 58 acres worth of upland to work with. Obviously, there's a lot of existing parking that's there. As we sort of refine the development program and start getting consensus, we'll have to evaluate the parking needs, but we have a lot to work with starting off. And when you kind of look at the process or the analysis, very similar to Crossings, there's a lot of considerations we have to take into account. There are some significant specimen trees that are sprinkled throughout the site. So as development occurs, we have to take those into account. Obviously, the stormwater management and existing ponds and how we use them will become a big consideration. And we hope to get some clarity today with staff on a little bit more of those sort of items. There's also the idea of debris management and storm storage area. We'll work with staff for sizing on that. Right now, there are some open spaces that have been accommodating those sort of activities. So we'll be planning for that. There are things like open space and trail connectivity. Beach parking, we know, is a huge issue. We also know that there's concerns about the impacts of beach parking to the neighborhood. So we'll be working on some ideas to help alleviate some of those concerns. Castnet Drive parking, if you've been there, you know it's a little bit remote. And so how we can take advantage of some of that area. When you look at the program here in a minute, you'll see that there's a lot of potential program elements for sport courts. So sun angles become really important. And then, as Kyle mentioned, very similar to Crossings, the creation of public spaces for gathering, interpretation, and just celebrating the island is also important. And that'll link a little bit to the sort of the heritage and linear park trail concepts if we take those into consideration. Existing programs or existing stuff there, like I mentioned, the large open space is about the equivalent of 3 full-size soccer fields. There's a pretty large multi-purpose field that has soccer overlaid with a diamond, multiple restrooms, basketball courts, playgrounds, and the existing dog park. I think we'll be looking for input from you guys on whether that stays or is improved. There are currently 6 tennis courts and then some existing trails. So that's really what's there today. And then I think, Kirk will get with you on some potential program elements.
So just like the last park, we've been looking at the program requests from the community that have been gathered so far. For Chaplain Park, there was a desire for open play, natural turf fields, more for pickup, play, and practice. We need to consider debris management for storms. This location's used for that transition, so that's a spatial requirement we have to consider. There was a request for 2 restroom buildings with concessions, significant tennis and pickleball courts with a pro shop, parking obviously to support that whole program, and then amenities such as a dog park, a splash pad, a multi-age ADA accessible playground, as well as pathways with critical links so people can appreciate the landscape, so it connects with the park across 278 and it gets people down to the beach. And then finally, picnic shelters and pavilions to make it comfortable.
So I think we want to get your input on these items and whether these are appropriate or if you've got different priorities or different ideas.
Okay. Renee, if we'll go down do the same thing we did the last time.
Okay, it's Karen. Mr. Daly.
Oh, excuse me.
You're fine, Mr. Daly.
Yes. So I have a question for staff. How difficult is it for a site to be approved as a FEMA approved as a debris management site? A lot of what I heard yesterday was we only have 2 debris sites. We can't consider Port Royal or Barker or any place else as a debris site. Therefore, and here starts the bad logic, like bad dominoes, since this is a debris site, we cannot put turf here. And then we're back where we are. We've made no improvements because we have the same natural turf fields that are often closed. The one at Crossings has been closed for 3 years. And the reality of it is people get out there and adults play soccer on turf fields, no matter what kind of signage you put up in 15 languages, they're still going to go out there on a wet night in the cleats and adults and tear up your turf field, your grass field, excuse me. So we need to, and this will be a while before this, we actually break ground on these things, to look at finding another FEMA approved debris management site. And then I would suggest having coached baseball, having coached football, having gone to many different facilities just to play games. We consider 2 sets of turf fields, which are actually double turf fields. So it's basically a square with 2 rectangular play fields inside, where you can turn them from an equal sign with pointing horizontally to vertically and double your lifespan, almost double your lifespan of the turf, right? I would suggest 2 of those. There's room for those at Chaplain. We have plenty of room, and it's basically bare ground now. So I would suggest 1, we find about other debris sites. I think we can do that. We have plenty of town-owned land. And then 2, we go with double sets of turf fields here. And then, we're putting a lot of pressure on 50 acres. There's a lot of pushback to do nothing on 100 acres and then put everything on 50 acres. And that's just not going to address our deficiencies or move us forward. You're going to have too much in a small space, and you're going to have nothing in a space that's twice as large. Some of these elements, you're going to have to find which are the most digestible elements to put at Port Royal. Would that be a parkour and urban graffiti park, or would that be pickleball? What would people on that end of the island like more? And there's certain amenities in here. A dog park, is that unacceptable to Port Royal? It shouldn't be. So there's a lot of, you can't put all these elements in 150-acre park and have it be debris management and have it stay open for any length of time. If you run across those fields now, and especially in the off season, it's bare sand and sprinkler heads. And if you stick with just grass, we've made no progress. And so that's my recommendation. If you have a turf field, your game is always good to go. If you have grass, yeah, you can say you close it, but you can't be out there at night to chase people off and they never let it recover. So that's my 2 cents on Chaplain. And some of these elements will have to go somewhere else, and we need to find another debris management site.
Okay, Mr. Dowling.
Kurt Mead at Town Hall are coming
What
here.
would happen to those existing basketball courts?
Basketball courts. Existing.
And the question is, will they be kept?
What will
Well,
happen?
yeah, so what, I don't see any plans here. So what will be the plans for those?
What would you like to see? Would you like us to hang on to them or abandon?
I would like to see you hang on to them and then add at least 1 more. Maybe 2. My kids have practiced there, and when I go there, because I go to the dog park a lot, I always see people playing there. So they're used, they would, at the least, they would have to be resurfaced, but I would also consider adding another one at least.
Thank you.
There's trying to get, there really aren't many that I've seen basketball courts around the island. You go to the rec center, but that's often used for leagues and so forth. But there's a lot of travel programs that are trying to find basketball courts to practice on. It's very difficult.
Thank you.
Ms. Christian?
My question would be, can the dog park be used as the debris management site? Because that would be grass, right? I mean, that would be, could you multi-use that field in an emergency if you had a hurricane and you needed to use it? I mean, could that just, you could have a part of the fenced-in area that could be opened up, and that way you wouldn't have to use the multi-use turf fields to use as the debris area. I don't know, that's just a thought. I like the idea of the splash pad here because it's closer to the beach It's closer to people who are wearing their swimsuits already, closest, it's more ideal location for a splash pad versus crossings. If I had to pick between the two, I think a playground at the other one on crossings might be a better fit since you're having a splash pad here. And tennis courts. Now I'm okay with the 24 pickleball courts, but tennis courts, there's 6 already there, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, could you just get by with just adding a couple of extra and doing 8 instead of 12? I mean, tennis courts are all over the island already. You can redo the ones that are there, add a few more, and then really focus on pickleball since there's not a lot of pickleball courts yet. And that seems to be the trend people are going to. And there's, tennis courts are more available right now. But that's my thoughts.
Okay, Mr. O'Karma.
Let's stay with the dog park for a second. The Chrissy's idea of possibly using that for debris management. I mean, I know things can change, but I'm like Tom. I take my dog often there, and it's used by a lot of people. But you have to walk to it. You have to walk. It's not just. I don't know how you would use it as a debris management site right now, because you have to go down a trail, probably a city block or so to get to it. So something would have to change in terms of access to that. And I do believe that the last comment on the dog park is it is used by lots of people. It's centrally located, and I think that's something that we should not undo. Now, whether that's the spot for it, to Butch's comment in terms of thinking this as a blank slate, whether that's the right spot, I don't know. But I just think that the concept of a dog park is something that we should keep as an amenity. The pickleball, I assume this is the answer then that we're looking for, the 24 pickleball courts with pro shop and restrooms. This is what everybody has been, striving to get on the agenda and move up the agenda. And this is the one that would be big enough to hold events where people would come in from off island and actually have, pickleball events and the like. So this is the answer, I guess, that we've been looking for and that the pickleball community has been looking for. And if this is the right place for it, I continue to be, great with it. And then I have a question that maybe I should know this. Maybe I use different words, but this concept of Chaplain Linear Park, maybe, I guess I just don't use that word, but can you go back a few slides which shows the park and then explain to me what the concept of linear means?
The Chaplain Linear Park is a project that was planned for in 2019.
I think it was even older than that.
Even older than
2013 or 14.
And it began over in the Shelter Cove area.
Oh.
And then parallels 278 and ultimately connects to Chaplain Park. The reason Trey brought it into the discussion is because there will be critical points of connection that the redeveloped Chaplain Park needs to reflect. So that, as that project comes online, it looks like there was some thought put into it and things are starting to congeal.
Yeah, the concept was you're going to connect the Shelter Cove area to Chaplain area, and we just want to make sure we're aware of it.
Okay. Yeah. I never called it that, but yeah, it's the whole Shelter Cove. Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, and we talked a lot about there needs to be a safe way for people to get across 278 from one to the other. So, okay, thank you for clarifying that for me.
Sure.
That's all I've got.
Okay, Mr. Zarilla.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to make a couple comments about, the 12 tennis courts, pickleball courts. I think, and the basketball court. The one thing is that all of these are kind of compatible. You've got if you have hard courts, you could have basketball, you could put pickleball courts on there. So I think there's an opportunity, and I don't know if this has been done, to make it quite flexible that these could be interchangeable. If you needed to use half the tennis courts as pickleball courts on a given day, you could change that. It won't be the best. But I think, we should think of it in those terms, and also basketball courts on there could be used. And because it's difficult to predict, tennis may not be as popular as pickleball, but perhaps you get younger people moving in and you have more tennis requests in 5 or 10 years. You don't know. So I think we need to keep some flexibility in what's going on here. And I also I think it was Jerry's comment about the debris management, that needs to be solved. I think maybe because of just where it is makes it a good place and it can't be gotten rid of, but it does seem like a kind of a waste of space that's necessary, but it's in a very kind of advantageous part of the island. So those are my comments.
Can I go back and make one more comment? That's Jerry O'Karma.
Absolutely.
To Bill's comment there, I understand where he's coming from. I will say that, having been on the commission 4.5 years, whatever it is, and I don't think we've had one meeting where we haven't had pickleball folks there. They have specifically said, we're tired of playing on courts where there's a basket up there, there's basketball lines, there's tennis court lines. We want dedicated world-class pickleball courts that are accessible to them. So I understand the flexibility that what Bill just said, but I'm just kind of being the historian here, telling you over the last 4 years, and I'm sure Butch, you can just verify this as well. Yeah. They want dedicated courts. They don't want people doing other things on their courts.
No, I get that, Jerry. And what I was saying, my point was not that all the courts would be flexible. In other words, you got 24, but if you can, if you have overflow, you could have 30 by designing the tennis courts properly or something like that, and not just for overflow. Yeah. And I'm just thinking we need to have some flexibility here that, and maybe in a couple of years you want to convert the 12 tennis courts to pickleball courts. But I think we ought to take that into consideration, that 24 may not be adequate, but if you have 24 plus 6 or 10 more that could be used is, I think the best approach.
Yeah. Okay. I agree.
I got the history of that, and I got, but so.
Yeah.
I will share with you, we've worked on a number of tennis complexes, and one of the requirements of USTA, and they're working on trying to change this, but USTA will not allow tournament play or league play on a tennis court that also has pickleball court markings. So there is a little bit of concern if we overlap those two elements, because it may limit their use long-term.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Mr. Kasaya?
Okay. 3 or 4 things. One, I agree with the comments about the debris area. I don't know what it would take to find another location, but my personal feelings are sometimes when parks are built and there hasn't been a lot of shall we say overwhelming support for things that happen in parks to be recreation oriented, sometimes you get debris management fields because it's a big open space and it's a good place to plop stuff. I think now that we are really looking at the redevelopment of these facilities and the emphasis that's happened in Parks and Recreation over the last 6 or 7 years, I would really like to see if there's another location that we could put that debris management field, and that would allow us to do the turf field there that Jack was talking about. And would, I think, really help us with our field scheduling issues and the condition of the fields. The second thing I would recommend is when you're talking about the Mid-Island tract. I think that a tennis and pickleball complex there would be a great addition that I think would fit well with the neighbors and would provide a nice attraction for that area to help with the economic development of the area. And that would allow us to look at the area where we currently have the tennis courts as the possibility to use it for something else. To me, again, back looking at this whole project as kind of a blank slate, so to speak. You know, don't throw any ideas out just because something's already happening there. The other part that I would talk about is when you're driving down 278, unless you see the signs, you don't really know that Chaplain Park is there. So I think if you could somehow increase the visibility for the park from 278, I'm not saying knock down all the trees or anything like that. I'm just saying let people know that there's really a nice park there. That would help. I think that also some type of boardwalk out into Broad Creek. I don't know if you can do it or not, but I know that at one point they were talking about maybe a fishing pier or something like that. I think that'd be a great amenity along the linear park. And the last comment I'd make is I did get a copy of a report from the Eco Heritage Advisory Coalition. It's a group of folks here in town, and they've got some really good ideas about how to use the areas for nature study and ecotourism. And I think that deserves a good look. I'd also like to see a boardwalk along the ocean side of the park. I guess that's the way I'll put it. Along the wetlands that would be good for folks to come out and be able to walk along and see the wetlands and the ponds. And it's really pretty. And I think it's something that folks, if they could find access to it, would enjoy going to see. So with that, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I've got a few closing comments, and then Mr. Chairman, is it appropriate for me to read the input that was received, or?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, and this is from Alex, and I may not be pronouncing his name correctly, Cruden. Dear Parks and Rec Commission, first, I greatly appreciate the word Commission member Jerry Okarma voiced near the conclusion of your previous meeting. That word was pickleball. And in that spirit, I hope the Commission will be working with the newly chosen consultants to briskly proceed with the 24-court project that you have previously endorsed and that is recommended for Chaplain Park in the town's master plan for recreation. Thank you again for your consideration. Alex Cruden, President, Hilton Head Island Pickleball Club.
Okay.
So in closing, our next steps will be, as I mentioned, to begin to take program elements that we've been discussing for each of the two parks and apply them to the park to see what each park can accept facility-wise. We'll then also be coordinating with the Mid-Island track team to ensure that nothing's slipping through the cracks and that the critical program elements are accommodated in our two park sites and their park site. And then we'll be coming back with some preliminary concept plans that we will bring before you to get some input again and confirmation on. So that will happen we anticipate sometime in November of this year. It's still a little fluid, but that's where we're headed. And we thank you so much for your time and your input. We really appreciate it and look forward to coming back to get some additional input.
Can I ask one question from the consultants before we close?
Sure, go ahead, Jack.
Okay, well, earlier you had mentioned that later today you would be actually doing a walkthrough of crossings, I believe. Would it be in any way helpful to have someone who is involved at crossings walk through with you to answer any basic questions you may have about what is the function of this, what is that, how does this arrangement work? It looks weird. Anything along those lines, or is this something that consultants like to do solely on their own just to get their thoughts together? I'm just not done this process and just curious what your thoughts would be.
We're not just going on our own. We are going with staff representatives who I believe have had a lot of input. I think they've heard from folks previously and will be sharing that information with us. Beyond that, we don't want to get too large a group because we want to be able to cover ground fairly quickly. But you're welcome to join in.
I was gonna say, Jack, are you volunteering?
Yeah, I'm volunteering. I mean, the decisions that you professionally make based on what you professionally know are different than just the insight of somebody who coaches there and spends a lot of time there. So maybe there's something helpful, maybe not. I promise to walk quickly if I am invited. So just offering.
Hey, Jack, this is Taylor. Thank you so much for offering to participate in the walkthrough today. I'll confabulate with our consultants and my supervisor on this, and we'll get back to you in some way. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm assuming that concludes the presentation. Do we have any other comments from commission members? And I guess if we could take the presentation down, we could actually see people again. So there we go. Do we have any other comments from commission members about today's presentation or anything that we need to talk about?
Karen, did we have any callers for today?
No, we had no one call in. No.
No one's called in, so no appearances by citizens. Okay.
And there was just that one comment on the open town hall portal.
All right. All right. Well, if there's no further comments, thank you again for all your time. Thank you to Wood Partners and to the design team for this presentation. And Taylor, have you got anything else for us? Okay, in that case.
No, sir. Thank you.
All right. Well, in that case, our workshop meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.